Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit radical. We aren't just looking at a new topic, we are going to completely deconstruct our rigid reliance on logic and what we so confidently call objective reality. Have you ever felt like the rules of the universe, or even your own deeply held moral compass, are absolute? We'll get ready to question literally everything. We're going to explore how the things we consider absolute truths are often just incredibly convenient illusions, and how finally understanding this can actually lead to profound liberation.
All right, here's our roadmap for the journey. We'll start with absolute non-existence, move into compressed cognition, rethink the lying precept and filial piety, check out the rubber hand illusion, and wrap it all up with language limits.
Okay, part 1, absolute non-existence. Let's start questioning truth.
To kick things off, let's consider the famous Cretan liar paradox from ancient Greece. Imagine an island where literally every single person always lies, no exceptions. Now you meet a guy from this island and he says to you, "We all lie." Is he telling the truth? I mean, think about it. If he's lying, then his statement is false, which means they don't all lie, meaning he actually might be telling the truth. But if he is telling the truth, well, that completely violates the initial rule that everyone lies. It's like a deliberate glitch in your brain's operating system. A completely true or completely false world logically just collapses in on itself. You know, the Buddha actually used this exact kind of logical loop to dissolve arrogance. Before becoming a monk, a very proud scholar named Juchi Lo declared, "I accept no teachings." The Buddha didn't argue. He just simply replied, "Do you accept the teaching that you accept no teachings?" And just like that, in a single instant, Juchi Lo's arrogant, absolute stance was entirely deconstructed. He realized he was trapped in his own self-referential loop, constantly clinging to that dualistic trap of this versus that. Moving right along to section 2, logic is compressed cognition, basically shortcuts of the mind.
So why do we rely on these easily broken rules? The answer is surprisingly practical. Logic is simply compressed cognition. Take the number pi, for instance. It's an infinite, non-repeating decimal. Our brains literally cannot process or memorize an infinite string of numbers every time we need to measure a circle. So what do? We compress it into a usable concept, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. And here's the thing, we do this exact same thing with spiritual and moral frameworks too. We take massive, infinite concepts and compress them into easy-to-remember rules, like just reciting the name of Mituo or summarizing thousands of scriptures into the basic law of karma. It makes life manageable, sure, but we completely forget that these are shortcuts, not absolute reality.
Let's look at how this plays out. We're all taught the ironclad law of cause and effect, right? But if cause and effect is an absolute universal law, does the law itself follow the law? If yes, well, what caused the law? That cause would need a prior cause, and boom, you've triggered an infinite backward regression. But if no, then the rule naturally breaks its own absolute status. Our brains compress information, creating rules that reflect back on themselves. We call it the law of karma, but fundamentally, it's just our own cognition playing a massive game of reflections.
Section 3, rethinking the lying precept and moving beyond physical facts in Foggia.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that truly keeping the precept against lying isn't just about matching your words to physical facts. It goes way deeper than that. The standard view in Foggia is pretty basic. If a wall is black, don't say it's white. But the deeper, ultimate truth, it's recognizing that our intense attachments to being right or wrong are themselves cognitive illusions. When you stubbornly defend your viewpoint, solidifying those concepts in your mind as absolute realities, that is the true falsehood. To genuinely not lie is to transcend fixed cognition altogether. You don't need to force yourself to tell the truth. When you drop the heavy, exhausting burden of ego and attachment, truthfulness just becomes your natural default state.
All right, section 4, filial piety and Confucianism. Let's deconstruct some traditional roles. Consider this incredibly powerful quote. Filial piety is the foundation of becoming a Buddha. For nearly 2,000 years, Confucian thought has deeply ingrained this into our cultural DNA. We're essentially born into a world where this relationship is an absolute, unquestionable law. But if we apply our deconstructive lens here, we really have to ask, is blindly following these traditional roles the ultimate truth, or is it just another collective cognitive illusion designed to keep society stable? Because there's a profound difference between superficial adherence and true wisdom. The traditional approach is basically to just please your parents, right? Buying gifts, saying what they want to hear. But the deconstructed view completely flips this on its head.
True filial piety is actually about self-awareness. It's about making sure your loved ones don't sink even deeper into the mud of greed and endless attachment. It's not about expanding your ego to include my family and then defending that unit blindly. It's about acting appropriately in the moment, using skillful means to help them let go of their own attachments, rather than just feeding their worldly desires.
Okay, section 5, the rubber hand illusion. This is where we talk about how we actually render reality. To ground this, let's look at a famous psychological experiment. Picture this. Your real hand is hidden out of sight in a box, and a fake rubber hand is placed right on the table in front of you. A researcher takes 2 brushes and strokes both your hidden real hand and the visible fake hand at the exact same time. Within minutes, because your visual and tactile sensations line up perfectly, your brain actually adopts the fake hand. If someone suddenly pulls out a hammer and hits the rubber hand, you will instinctively flinch. You'll feel genuine fear, maybe even a phantom pain. Your brain literally just overwrote your physical reality based purely on sensory input. Which brings us to a pretty staggering conclusion, what we confidently call objective reality. Our physical bodies, the room you're sitting in right now, is largely just a shared cognitive result. In Eastern terms, it's a shared karma. Because these physical rules were planted in our cognition before we were even born, we just never question them. We don't question gravity any more than we question if Mount Everest is in Nepal. It feels absolutely rock solid, but the rubber hand experiment proves that our brains are simply rendering a reality based on highly malleable, synchronized inputs.
And finally, Section 6, Language Limits and Conclusion. Time to abandon the raft.
Language itself is inherently limited because it relies on those exact same self-referential logical loops we've been talking about. So to explain what exists beyond language, we use the mirror analogy. Think of your consciousness like this. Awareness is simply what the mirror reflects in any given moment. Self-nature is just a convenient way to describe the physical mirror itself, though be careful not to think of it as a rigid physical object. And then there's Fa Xing, the seamless, indivisible unity of the mirror and its reflection acting together. You literally cannot separate the reflection from the glass.
So we really only have 2 choices here. We can stay trapped in the endless loop of language and logic, constantly arguing over what is definitively true, expanding the boundaries of our arguments forever without ever reaching an absolute bottom. Or we can practice knowing without getting trapped. Think of it like me presenting this explainer right now. I'm reading the words, I'm fully engaged, I'm taking it seriously, but I'm not trapped into believing the words themselves are the ultimate reality. I know it's a projection, but I play the game fully anyway.
Which brings us to this absolutely vital reminder. Use the raft to cross the river, then abandon the raft. Literally everything in this explainer, the deconstruction, the paradoxes, the analogies, they are all just tools. They're a raft meant to get you across the river of rigid cognition. Once you actually understand the illusion, please don't make the mistake of desperately clinging to the concept of letting go. Because if you fiercely attach yourself to the idea that everything is an illusion, guess what? You've just built yourself a brand new prison of fixed cognition. Drop the raft.
You are the mirror, the reflection, and the observer, all at the exact same time. The universe isn't some empty void of nothingness. It's a wondrous, dynamic observation. Knowing the rules of the illusion doesn't mean you stop living your life. It means you finally start playing the game freely without the heavy burden of being trapped inside it. So my final question to you is this. Now that you can actually see the strings, are you ready to truly play the game?